Okay. We are live. You see
All
where it
right.
says you are live?
Yeah.
That means this is out to the interwebs out there in the world.
Sweet.
So, my name is Mike Mills, and this is Conrad Jackson.
Hello.
And today we are going to chat a little bit about what I would consider a pertinent topic these days, simply because, we're both in real estate. Conrad is a realtor, he's a land developer, he's a builder, if there's anything in real estate, he's doing it. So,
Exactly.
so what we're going to chat about today is looking at if you're having a hard time, finding a house, getting under contract, you have some difficulties because, we're going up against 15, 20 different offers, depending on where you're trying to buy and all that kind of stuff. Is there an alternative? As a lender, I get asked all the time about purchasing land and building a home. And I don't want to say it's a complicated topic, but it's certainly something that if you're not familiar with it, wading into it, just kind of out of the blue or not having a whole lot of experience with it isn't the best idea. And Conrad's experienced that personally.
Oh yeah.
So that's why we're talking to him. But so we're going to talk today specifically about buying land and what to look for, what to identify, what kind of pitfalls are there, how to get it financed, all that kind of stuff. We're going to do a few more of these in the future related to actually building homes and what goes into that, because Conrad buys land, Conrad builds on the land, Conrad develops the land, then Conrad sells the house.
Yeah, man.
So he's
Dirt's
got
kind of my job these days, I guess.
That's right. You got it from soup to nuts, man, all the way through. So, but before we get there, and we are going to talk about this, I do want to ask you, how do you feel about your boys, the Dallas Mavericks?
Dallas Mavericks
season
man.
ended last night.
Gosh, man, season ended last night. Like I said, I was super proud.
Yeah.
I did not expect us to go as deep as we went.
Yep.
Initially I thought we were going to get swept.
Right.
So it was kind of like a gentleman's sweep. I'm
Yeah.
okay with that.
Yeah.
Luka showed up. My Mavs far exceeded my expectations. We got some work to do in the offseason, get some free agents in. We definitely need a big man. We need Hardaway Jr. to get back healthy. And we need another scorer. Yeah. If we can keep Brunson cool, if we can't, we got to replace that offense with somebody else. But I'm thoroughly satisfied with how this season went, considering the roster that we had,
right,
and the injuries that we sustained
right.
early. I couldn't have been more proud. And we lost to Golden State. Like, nobody really hates Golden State, do they?
Top 4 teams in the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I hear people
Yeah.
complaining, "Oh, the Mavs." I'm like, they made it to the Western Conference Finals, man. That's the top 4 teams. Like, relax. It's
Exactly.
okay. Yeah.
So ultimately, I thought we did fantastic, and I was thoroughly surprised that it went 5 games.
Yeah. Yeah.
Considering.
Well, I was surprised it beat Phoenix. Honestly, I didn't think that was going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everybody thought we were going down that series. I felt like we had enough to beat Phoenix. I did not think we had enough to beat Golden State, and I was thoroughly surprised at how tough they competed.
Nobody,
that series.
Not many people do. Not many people do.
Yeah. So, Mavs fans, we have a bright future.
Yes, we got something on the horizon. Don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. All right. Well, I wanted your 2 cents on that because we talk about that from time to time. So, and I know basketball is a passion of yours. So,
absolutely, I'm a basketball junkie.
But the other passion of yours is real estate. So, so let's dive into that. So I wanted to have you here simply because this is always a learning adventure for me, because you and I have talked about this a lot, and I really want to get into, buying properties and building homes on them and selling them, because for me, it's kind of a learning process, right? You want to start small, find out a few pieces along the way, and you've helped me with that, just kind of understanding what to look for and what to keep my eye out for. So, so today we're going to talk specifically about just land itself. We're not going to talk about building houses. We'll get to that. Yeah. But because we could be here for hours and hours. Yeah. So we want to keep it as narrow as we can and just talk about what it takes to actually find a piece of land, what to look for, what to make sure you watch out for, how to get it financed, kind of all the nuts and bolts when it comes to identifying properties. Okay. Now, just to give a little background for yourself, tell everybody a little bit about, kind of what you've done in the past, where you started, and why you were the expert on this, or one of the experts on this topic.
Okay. Yeah. So like many things, most people will get into some new venture because they're trying to solve a problem.
Right.
Well, myself included. It was the same for me. The whole reason why I got into looking for land and purchasing and becoming a home builder was because, you know, I was tired of forming relationships with other builders to sell their properties and it not going anywhere.
Right.
You know, so that's what got me into it. I started a home building company, and understanding if you have a home building company, you need to build homes and you have to have land to build homes. So naturally you started looking for land. So, you know, that is where the need kind of surfaced. We started formed the company in 2016.
Okay.
Home building company. So that's where I've been a realtor for now. I think this is year 17 as of June 1st.
Long time.
That's a long time.
Yeah. Well, especially people say you've been doing this for 17 years, Conrad. You look so young, and you are, but you just started when you were like 18. Right?
Yeah. Just right after. I think technically I may have been 19. I think I started June 1st of 2005.
Yeah.
I want to say.
Yeah.
So 17 years.
That's not bad.
Close. I don't know. Math is not my strong suit, but
yeah, I was being added up. I don't know.
But yeah, so yeah, that's where it started. That's where the need started. So for me, I've been selling homes, you know, with builders for many, many years. And then when you become one, you start to get more in depth on what you need, what to look for, what are the problems that are arising when you do find those particular parcels of land. And so it's a different experience. These days, everybody's trying to figure out what to do, right? And find a way to transition outside of where all the competition is.
Right.
And land is one place that you can do that.
Yes. And I think that's the thing a lot of people miss when they're buying is because as a lender, I have people call, and I said this earlier, but people call me all the time. And their first thing is like, you know, we want to buy land and we want to build a house.
Yep.
And I'm a you know, mortgage banker, and, you know, land, as you know, typically is done through private banks. When you do those purchases, you can't do them through your larger mortgage lenders.
Right.
We don't typically do those, but the process of doing it is complicated. And you know, in a lot of ways, it involves a lot of cash. Sometimes you need to have, depending on what you're looking to do.
Yep.
And there's just a lot of pitfalls along the way that if you don't know, and it's always funny because, you know, I don't mean to pick on them, but it's always the young ones that call me. They're like 25 and they're like, we're going to build our dream home. Like, slow down.
Slow your roll a little bit.
Right. Let's get the first house that's already there. Let's learn how to like fix the dishwasher. And then we'll get into like, you know, laying slabs.
I get a lot of the same too when they call it like, hey, we heard you're a home builder. We want to build our house on our great property. And it's like, do you have the land? No. Do you know what the property is going to look like? No. It's like, okay.
All right. We got a lot of problems to solve right out of the gate. So, so I know, you know, we talked before a long time ago about, you know, your whole history of doing real estate. Now, the very first time you did an investment property of any kind, you bought a little rinky dink, like purple house.
Yep. It was many colors. It was not just purple. It was many colors.
Right. And you fixed it up, went through all the trial and error on that.
Yep.
I think you even told me, I mean, well, because you paid so little for it and you sold it right. You did make a good little chunk of change on it.
We made a boatload of cash on it.
Yeah, which is unusual because usually when you do your first flip, you know, the profit margin is a little thin because you got to pay for all your mistakes, right? You screw up stuff, you got to pay for it.
Yep.
So, but when was your first, what was the first land purchase that you did when you actually bought a piece of property that you're like, I'm going to put something on this?
Yeah. So after we formed our company, one of the main reasons why we formed our company is because we dealt with a seller in a little small town where I do some business called Alvarado, Texas. And the seller was looking to get rid of some properties. And we had kind of mentioned in passing with one of the people that he knew that we were starting a home building company. We're looking to buy some land and some lots. And so where that started was that guy reached out to us and said, hey, I'm selling these 10 lots as a package deal. If you'd like, why don't you buy them from me? You pay me cash. I'll give you a great deal on them. This was 2016.
Okay.
And so that was my first opportunity to actually buy just a lot.
Gotcha.
And we bought 10 at a time. We think we paid $60,000 cash for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
For all 10 or total?
10 lots.
Okay. Nice.
So, that's for all 10.
And
total.
this was in Alvarado?
This was in Alvarado.
Wow.
2016.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Now one lot will cost you $40,000.
Right. Say, man, it's gone up quite a bit since then. So,
but that was our introduction into purchasing land. So yeah, that was where we started. We took those lots and found out quickly that some of them were not buildable.
Right.
Some of them were not where we thought that they were. You know, just
hence the mistakes you got to pay for. Yeah.
A lot of learning experiences, you know, and that's that is where ultimately we started the education and figuring out, okay, we got to check certain things before we go forward.
Right.
But that's where we started.
So, okay. So then you buy your first piece of land and you're now going, okay, now I got to figure out how I got to build on this. So now fast forward, what is that? We're doing math again. It was 6 years, 2022. So now today, Conrad's had 6 years of experience of going, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. And again, you and I have talked about this, but so now when you're identifying land, what are some, initial points that are what you would call like maybe non-starters? Like they have to have this, or else I'm out.
Sure. So one of the big things that people run into a lot, or what I've been running into a lot, is when people sell lots, they just think that any lot is buildable. And it's just not the case. Right.
Or it may be, but it'll cost you a ton of money.
It may cost you some money. It may also cost you some administrative help from the city or the county, whatever jurisdiction you're in. Most cities or counties, mainly when you're inside city limits, they want the lot size minimum to be about at least a minimum of 6,000 square feet.
Okay.
So
the municipality wants the lot to be 6,000 feet for or 6,000 square feet for most counties and cities.
Most cities,
because they don't want you building like a little cracker box.
Exactly. Typically, they have setback requirements, meaning you can only build up to a certain amount of feet to the property line.
Gotcha.
Right. And so in order to achieve what they want as a minimum square foot home requirements and elevations and things that you have to do to meet their requirements, you have to have a certain lot size.
Okay.
And so that right off the bat is number one. How big is the lot?
Right.
Because if you've got a 3,000 square foot lot, it's going to be really hard to build a 3 bed, 2 bath. That's 1,500, 1,600 square feet.
You can build a shop. That's about it.
You can get a shed
nobody can live in
from Home Depot, and add on to it one room.
You plop it in there, Which these days with the prices of homes, maybe that's the way
you could probably sell for 200,000 if you did that. So, but that's one of the first things right off the bat is number one, when people send me a lot, they'll send me the address, or if it doesn't have an address, they'll send me the coordinates, and I'll be able to look up that lot, look up the size of the lot, and then also look at where it lies on the street.
Okay.
Right. Because there are a lot of off-market deals that pop up that I get probably 2 or 3 times a week, where they'll be like, hey, this lot, it's 10,000 square feet and it's only $6,000.
Yeah.
The second thing we're looking for is it on a road? Or is it landlocked?
Right.
A lot of these.
Can you get to a street?
Yeah. And that's one thing that people miss. They're like, oh man, I've got this great deal. It's a fantastic lot. And then you look at it and it's like, there's no road to get to it. Or maybe it's landlocked. It's in between 2 or 3 other lots, and you have to have an easement to get to it, which causes a whole nother set of problems. Number 3 is typically, is it in a floodplain?
Right.
When they say floodplain, is it in a piece of area that has known to have either flooded in the past or has a great chance to flood in the future?
Right.
For that, if you do buy and build on something like that, typically it's a lot more engineering work that you have to do, which means there's more money that you have to pay.
Right.
And then whoever lives in that property has to pay additional funds for insurance.
Right.
To make sure that, since this is in an area that tends to flood or could potentially flood, they have extra coverage on that property.
Right. And depending on how deep it is in the floodplain, it's how much insurance. It may not be a lot, or it could be a heck of a lot, depending on where it is.
Absolutely.
So then you mentioned something a minute ago about your wholesale deals and stuff. And you and I talked about this again too, where I was, kind of naive to where this stuff comes from. But so tell us how you actually find land, because I know you have wholesalers that'll call you, you have different sites that you subscribe to, but I think that's a little confusing, especially because most people are used to going on Zillow or going on whatever and looking for stuff. But the reality is
on Zillow,
right?
For anything,
right? Most of the properties that like you're buying are never going to show up on there. So
it just depends, man. It's a range. I can tell you that I've bought properties off of MLS. I have a property right now that I'm building on that I bought it from MLS. Right. I've got properties that we do get off market. The best properties, I think, come from word of mouth. Okay. Like, even if you're looking for homes, word of mouth is the best source. I look often at the county's tax sale information to see if
somebody didn't pay their taxes.
They didn't pay their. I've bought multiple properties, multiple lots like that.
Really?
We have 260 by, I think, 125. Actually, they're a little bit bigger. Those were like 75 by 125 size lots that we bought on the county, courthouse steps. And I think it cost me a grand total. I think we bought 2 and it cost me a grand total of $1,200.
Oh, wow.
So there are deals there. A lot of times what I'll tell people, if they're looking for individual lots to build like a home on inside city limits, I'll say, if you go on most counties' websites and you look inside city limits, typically those maps that you're looking at on the county's websites are interactive maps, meaning you can choose different options to see like the parcel sizes of every lot in that town or in that city, right? And so what you're looking for is a cluster of homes and then these empty lots in between them.
Sit there.
Yeah, because when you click on that, then a lot of times it'll pop up that county report with that owner's information. Most of the time, of course, they do not live anywhere close, and you can send them a letter and say, hey, I saw this lot. I found this lot. I'd like to buy it. And
so
you get
reach out to people directly.
Absolutely.
So you'll find a lot that somebody needs to build on because there's houses going around it. Because then know the infrastructure's there,
that's right.
The water, the sewage, the electric, everything else.
Supposedly,
90%
of the
not
time.
All the time, not all the time. But you see that stuff that they have it, and then therefore the cost of building on that lot is going to be much cheaper because all the infrastructure is already there.
Right. You're assuming that the infrastructure is there, and a lot of times the platting is what almost is most important because it's already pre-platted.
Right.
Meaning you don't have to come in and change the boundary lines with the city because it's already set. You just have to purchase the lot. Hopefully the utilities and stuff are still intact. There's enough water pressure for you to get your water, and you can just focus on building.
Right.
Yeah. But that's a great source. That's on pretty much every county has it. And most people don't think about that when they're looking inside the city limits or in the county for particular lots. It's like they're there. They show the interactive map. They show the plats, the layouts, the street names, the floodways, everything. And you just have to go and look for it.
It's funny, and you said this to me one time too, that you realized after getting into this a little bit that it's like a lot of things. It's kind of a game, right? Because if you know how to play the game, and you know what the rules are, and know kind of how to access certain information, then it's really not that tough, right? But there's almost like a little bubble around. Nobody wants to kind of give the secret sauce away because then you get competition. You got more people competing for land.
Ultimately, and I also say this to a lot of people, when I talk about any type of education we're doing in real estate, I give out this information all the time. 99% of people aren't going to do anything with it.
No. Nope.
The 1% that do act on it won't be my competition.
Right. Yeah, it's one thing to say, it's a whole other thing to do. That's all things in life. So so you also I think you said you use some wholesalers too. Just for the really novice people, because that's kind of who I'm aiming this at, like explain to people what a wholesaler is.
Absolutely. So a wholesaler is someone who is going to basically find a deal. They'll find a piece of property and they'll contract that property with the owner of that property. Right. And then they'll turn around and they'll have a list of maybe investors or potential buyers, and they'll take that contract, raise the price of that property and offer a different contract or assign that contract to the next buyer or one of their investors at a higher price.
Right.
So they will take the difference of those two contracts, the original one and then the second one that they've increased the price on. And the difference is their fee.
Right.
It's a wholesale fee.
Right. They're like the middleman.
They're absolutely the middleman. They're literally in the middle, and all they're doing is taking a fee for connecting one person to another, and a sale takes place.
And it's funny how it sounds, I should say, it's not, but it sounds like a very simple thing, but there's an entire cottage industry that's just built around that.
Oh yeah.
But that's people, I mean, those guys are going out knocking on doors.
They are
looking through death records and all kinds of
all
stuff.
Sorts of public records and anything that they can get their hands on. They're talking to neighbors. They're talking to church members. They are literally going door to door to find these pieces of land.
They're mining for gold.
Yeah. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And for that, they get a fee.
Of course.
And as they should.
Right. But it saves you time from having to go out and do the same thing. You're going to pay a premium for it, but that's how all things.
It's the cost of doing business.
That's right. You can't do everything, right?
Exactly.
You got 24 hours. You can't do all the things. Somebody's got to handle a piece of it.
Exactly. So I will often utilize them to find a good source of deals. I'll tell you one other great spot that most people don't look for properties and for land is Facebook Marketplace.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I found a bunch of land on
On the
Facebook.
socials, they got land.
Social media sites. They have literally land deals where people, a lot of the
You're not talking about the metaverse, right?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what's what anymore.
Right.
I feel like I could be.
Right.
You know, I'm saying Facebook. I don't know what it's called these days.
Right.
But ultimately, in Facebook Marketplace, there's a lot of owners who don't want to go through brokers who will post their land. They will also post opportunities to owner finance land through Facebook Marketplace, and you can search by city, zip code, area, region, whatever. And people think you just use it for social, but I look for deals there, and I find deals there.
Yeah.
It's a great place to see what's out there, especially if you're just getting into it,
right?
And you don't have a lot of funds available. That's a great source to try to find some owner finance land deals.
Oh, so yeah, you had told me that too, where we'll get into the financing part a little bit later, but owner financing is something that occurs. I'm going to say all the time, but it's
pretty common,
right? It's not unusual.
Yeah, to the everyday buyer, you don't think too much about it, but to those people who operate in a different space, it's pretty common.
Would you say it's a regular thing? I would think, and this is just my brain, but I would think that would be a beneficial thing for someone who, say, is a little older in age, because that's a source of income for them. And instead of just one lump deal, they can say, well, just pay me this much every month for a period of time.
Yeah, we find that a lot. We find that a lot in also commercial deals too, where the numbers are bigger. And so what the owners are trying to do is not have a huge tax penalty for selling off this property and getting a lump sum.
Right.
And so as opposed to doing that, they'll space out their profits over a certain amount of years.
Right.
And they don't necessarily need the income, but they're getting that income over a specified period of time to avoid hefty tax penalties.
Would that, I wonder if that would apply. This is a question you and I were talking about earlier, to someone who, say, owns land, like it's older and retired, or going through whatever, and they're maybe have to go to because this happens a lot, end of life stuff. You're going into a home. Medicare or Medicaid is having to pay for that. But if you go sell some land or get a bunch of income,
now you have the income, you don't qualify for the Medicaid,
right?
That or what Medicare? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's Medicaid.
It's Medicaid. But that can interrupt your
medical advice.
Yeah, exactly. But that can interrupt your ability to qualify for programs like that, where you can get in-home care or assisted living.
But an owner finance deal, maybe not, right?
Owner finance deal is off the books.
Right.
So you don't. I'm not advocating. I'm just telling you what I've heard.
Hypothetically, it may not be
not a registered tax advisor or anything like that. Right. But yeah, I have heard of people doing things of that nature to where it doesn't show on their personal income, so that way they can still qualify for things.
Now, another thing that is I think unique, or not unique, but I think is a good place to start. And I didn't think about this again until we talked, was that when you started buying land, you're not looking for land in Mansfield. Right. You're not looking for land in even maybe Fort Worth or Dallas necessarily.
Right.
You're trying to buy land in Itasca and these towns that are off kind of the beaten path a little bit. Now tell people why that was, especially in the beginning, why that was something that you did.
Initially, I bought it because it was cheap.
Right.
It was affordable. I bought a lot where we're building on right now. I'm building a small multifamily unit, and the lot cost me $4,000.
Right.
So ultimately it was as a need to get into the space without having to
put a
lot of capital into it.
Right.
Nowadays, the focus is still a little bit that, but it's also shifting into where are the emerging markets, like where are builders trending to? What areas are they going to go to? And so what I'm trying to do is stay 2 towns ahead. If I see someone going out west, let's just say they're in, I don't know, Granbury, I might look 2 towns further than that, because I know that once Granbury is overloaded with
going to push volume
builders, everything pushes out a little bit further.
Yeah.
People want space these days, and with remote working, that's possible.
Yeah.
You can live out there and still have a job. So that's now, it's like the game is kind of shifted a little bit to going as to where the future will be, and trying to get an early start.
Right.
When I bought in Alvarado, I was 2 towns ahead.
Right.
And so not realizing it at the time.
Yeah.
So now I am trying to stay 2 towns ahead.
Right. You figured that out just after hindsight being 2020.
Yes.
You're like, oh wow,
Yeah.
okay, this actually worked out well for us
Yeah.
because we were just happened to be ahead of the curve a little bit.
Yeah.
Not on purpose. Hey, listen, getting lucky sometimes
that's what you need to get your jolt. And ultimately, you know, for me, figuring it out wasn't like, hey, this is like, you know, a philosophy thought or something that came to me. It was like, hey, this is brilliant. No, it's like I tried to buy another lot there and it was way more expensive.
Right.
So I needed to go further.
Right.
Then we started the educational, thought process of maybe I should think a little bit more in depth on this.
Now you get another one of the challenges that you deal with when dealing with land, and I think is another reason why you choose to pick some of the smaller towns. Affordability being one, obviously, because it's cheaper, less demand, whatever. But also, too, the county and the city is way easier to deal with.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, it just depends. For the most part, yes. There's a lot less restrictions that you may have. You'll still be building to the build code if you decide to build on that property. But you're also trying to, in my case, when I was building, I was trying to build a product at a lower price point.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the dirt is cheaper, I can build the home for cheaper, essentially, right? Which lowers my risk to be able to sell it on the back end.
Right.
And so dealing with those jurisdictions that have smaller water tap fees or smaller sewer tap fees where I have to connect to utilities when I'm trying to build the house, or they have less restrictions on how the house sits or setback requirements or things of that nature, it makes it easier to build the house cheaper.
Right.
And so, yes, that definitely plays a part. And then when you have to deal with a Fort Worth, although a lot of their stuff these days is automated, it has to go through 8 different departments,
right, which takes
a lot of time. And then they probably have 30, 40 people in front of you trying to get the same permits.
Right.
When you deal with these smaller jurisdictions, usually the guy who is over economic development is also the guy who's over planning and zoning, and also the guy who's over permitting processing. Yeah. And so it's like one guy that you're talking with, so he can administratively sign off on most of your stuff, or it may take one vote as opposed to going through 8 committee approvals before you get what you need.
Right.
So yeah.
And you found I think you found a little bit of a loophole's the wrong word. You found a shortcut in that if you buy land or multiple pieces of land in the same municipality, it gets easier and easier because now they know you. And now they know who you are. And now when you show up and say, hey, I need this, it goes a little easier.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to build a product that people are proud of. You're not just trying to build something cheap. You want to build something that will last over time and that will provide good quality housing. And so if you do that and you come into these small towns and jurisdictions the right way with the right attitude, not as a know-it-all, then a lot of times they will open the doors and welcome you with open arms because like everybody else, they need housing.
Yeah.
But if you go in as a know-it-all, this is how we do it over here and this is why you're wrong, a lot of times they'll shut you down before you ever get rolling.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of politics in that as well. But ultimately, if you come in with an open mind and are optimistic, you can do very well in some of these smaller towns.
Well, it's funny. We talk about it all the time. Just and I think all this has started shifting, and being Gen X and whatnot, we're not into getting dressed up, but we've talked about many times about how the guys that show it in the white shirts and the slacks, and they've got their briefcase and they're ready to. They see those guys coming in and they're like, oh, great.
They're like,
here comes this
guy. We're going to show them how we do it over here.
Yeah. And then you get a lot of good old boys telling them this guy's going to be, son. I don't know what you think.
Oh, yeah.
And then Conrad rolls up in his ball cap and his boots with his T-shirt with CM Construction on it. And just like, hey, what can I do to, make this easy for you guys? And like, oh, I like this guy.
Yeah, they're like, come on, son. Let me show you how we do it here. And let me help you out along the way. And you start to form a relationship, which everything these days seems to be relationship based.
It all is.
And then you can turn around and turn that piece of land or that property into something great for someone or for yourself.
Yeah. So on the actual lots themselves, so you talked about it has the setbacks that you got to be aware of. Correct. You got to have 6,000 square feet at a minimum, typically.
Usually that's about the size.
On average, whatever. You got to have the access to the utilities, or what's the expense like typically? And I know it's going to vary, but what's, if you have a lot that doesn't have, the water and the gas and electric and whatever, what is the typical cost on an average size lot to get that run in there?
Yeah. So just kind of put this out there as a precursor to this. If you are buying a property, a piece of land, and utilities are not at the property or easily accessible at the property, you as the builder or developer, you're classified as developer if you're
Uh-huh.
the owner trying to build on that property, you are responsible for bringing utilities to that,
Right.
even if you are inside city limits.
Right. It's still your job.
It's
to do
still
it.
your job to, when they say bring it, that means pay for it.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not cheap. It does depend on how far you're bringing it, what kind of line you're bringing it in. Is
Right.
it a 6-inch line, a 3.5? Usually most people these days want a 6-inch water line.
Yeah.
So you have enough water pressure. But give you an example, I had to bring one in a small town here recently, and I believe we were going a grand total of about 127 yards, and the cost for that was $18,000 to bring a water line and sewer line from the fire hydrant at the corner down about 2 blocks, straight line.
And do you typically, so like in your history, I'm sure you bought a lot and you're like, all right, great, I have this place. And then someone says, you're gonna have to bring water. And you're like, oh, okay, well, how much is that? It's like,
so let's talk about how that situation occurred,
Yeah.
right? Just a real quick, brief example. Typically, when you're buying a lot and you are trying to build on it, you'll submit that lot survey and you'll submit plans. Those plans go under review to planning and
Right.
zoning, economic development. When they review them, they'll vote on them at city council to say, yes, we will allow you to build this here.
Right.
Before they vote, typically that vote takes place because the different departments that need to look at it have looked at it, reviewed it, and said, yes, what you're trying to do is available. Right. In this instance, Public Works never saw my plans before my plans were approved. Okay. So we were, as a developer, operating under the assumption that
you were okay.
We were good.
Right.
Water was there. There are houses on all sides of me that have water. And so this was not the case.
No.
So that's another thing when we talk about, are
learning
we
lessons,
checking to see what's available at or close by the lot to make sure that what you're trying to do is available.
Which again goes back to the point of, if this is something you want to get started in, it's best to start small. Absolutely. Because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to miss stuff. There's going to be things that you're not going to know about. And every mistake costs money.
Absolutely.
Every time you get something wrong, every time you miss an easement or whatever, you miss something, you're going to pay for it.
Exactly. And there's no take backs or anything like that.
No.
Ultimately, like anything, any type of investing is risky. Right. But it's just understanding that this is just a different type of investment vehicle.
Right.
If flipping has its own risk, rentals have their own risk, wholesaling has risk.
Right.
Your life could be in danger for going on unknown properties at any given time.
Because there's a point you can get shot. Show up on grandpa's land. He's gonna put a 12 gauge in.
Exactly. That's just what happens these days. So ultimately, this is just a different type of risk, and you have to be able to account for that and know that, okay, I'm gonna make some mistakes. Let's just hope that I've done my due diligence enough to accomplish my goal. And if I do make mistakes, it doesn't completely destroy the project.
Right. So the land itself, once you've identified it and we talked about getting all the utilities and everything to it, there's a whole another cottage industry that exists that I found out about recently, that there are guys that buy the land, they find it from a wholesaler or whatever. They put the infrastructure in place.
Correct.
And then they sell it.
Absolutely.
And they don't build a house on it.
They don't build anything.
They have somebody else do that.
That's right.
Right. Focus on what you're good at and do that. If you're looking at it, this is some of this, perspective we're talking about from investing side of things, but we're also talking about, hey, I just want to build my own house.
Yeah.
But there's so many phases to it, because you got to find the land, which is a challenge.
Absolutely.
Then you got to make sure the land is buildable, or you can build on it, which is a challenge.
Absolutely.
And then you got to build a house, which is a challenge. So, so what are those guys doing whenever they're going in and, okay, I bought this piece of property, I'm actually going to get it all. Sometimes it involves rezoning. Sometimes it involves, like you said, just getting the utilities run there.
Absolutely.
And then turning around and selling that property for a premium, because now the builder doesn't have to do anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So those guys, I'm not going to get into like, hey, the formula of how much these guys make, but let's just say it's substantial. Most of these guys are probably making double of what the lot costs.
Right.
So
all that stuff's a pain in the butt.
Yeah. I mean, there's forms that you have to fill out for the rezoning. There's forms you have to fill out if it's outside city limits and you're trying to bring it inside city limits. There's forms that you have to fill out as a developer to say, hey, I'm going to submit these plans to the city.
Yeah.
Every time you fill out a form and you send it to the city or the county, it costs a fee. It's an application. So it costs another fee. So meanwhile, they're shelling out cash for plans and corrections of plans and replatting of plans, and then build plans, construction plans, infrastructure, anybody who wants to put a road in, a road has to have a certain amount of right of way and requirements of concrete versus asphalt. So there are companies that literally will take all of the infrastructure, general contract it, put it in, get the lots developable, and then they will sell them off to builders. Most of the neighborhoods that people live in the metropolitan areas are were built on because of someone coming in and doing that and selling them to the builders that you bought them from.
The builder didn't do it; somebody else did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. These are the developers. These are the guys who are taking all of the risk. You have to have really big bucks to be able to do this and do it long term.
Right.
And for that, they make a premium.
Right.
We're talking about they're probably making the millions of dollars every time that they sell off these parcels. So yeah, it's a whole nother business, and a lot of people don't even know it exists, but it does. That's how you're able to buy these homes from these builders, is because they had to buy them from somebody.
Somebody else had to do it.
That's right.
What do you think that so if an individual is trying to find a piece of property that they're going to build on themselves, I guess it would be finding the land is one thing, and then getting those other parts built onto it, because you've got to get the money from somewhere.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So when it comes to the financing part of it, now granted, you told me you bought a lot, $1,200, $5,000. It's always, you would say it's always beneficial if you can pay cash.
Absolutely.
Because it gives you more leverage for lending.
Absolutely.
If your house is paid for. Kind of talk about that a little
Absolutely. So anytime that we are purchasing property, especially when we're paying cash, if you spend all your cash up front on the lot, then what a lot of the lenders will allow you to do is use that as collateral, or a collateral portion of what your requirement is to build on that particular property.
Right.
So when I'm buying properties, I'm looking at the lot sizes and the land and seeing if it's good enough for me to take on a project on.
Right.
But for most people who are probably going to be listening to this, they're probably going to say, okay, well, I just want to buy it for myself.
Right.
Okay, well, you kind of have to work opposite. You kind of have to work and have the plans first.
Right.
So that way, when you see these lots that pop up, you make sure that what you want to build will actually fit on that lot.
Right.
So you're looking at the plans and seeing how big the lot requirement is going to be, and at least having an idea of how big that house is, and then turning around and trying to find the lot to match what it is that your need is.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, you want to, if you're building it for yourself, right? Correct. If we're not talking about investing, you're just building a house because you can't get one under contract because you compete against 50 people.
We're not mad about that.
Right. No, not at all. There's no bitterness in my voice whatsoever. But so you're saying that really first step is get your house designed.
Yeah. At least have a general idea of what the layout is going to be and the footprint of it is going to be. And so it kind of plays hand in hand with talking with the bank and as far as financing and figuring out how you're going to pay for this, right? If you're not paying cash, which most people are not, right? If you finance that lot, or if you do pay cash for the lot, some of it will be able to be used as collateral regardless, right? And so if you know how much you need, or how big the house is going to be square footage wise, the bank is going to require, first of all, a survey. They're going to require an appraisal, and they're also going to require a set of plans, because they want to know what you're building in order to give you a construction loan to build.
Right.
And so that's why I say, if you're building for yourself, you need to have those plans, or at least an idea of what those plans are going to be.
Yeah.
So that way, when the bank says, hey, give me an estimate of what this is going to cost, you can base that estimate off of those particular plans and the lot cost, and then turn around to the bank and saying, hey, we've got these two things plus a survey. Please order an appraisal. If the appraisal is within a certain amount of price point of what your target is, then they will allow you to get a loan on that property.
Right.
And usually they want 80% of loan to value is what they'll loan out on a construction loan.
Now, on a do they use, when you talk about that 20% that you have to have in there, can they use the equity in the lot?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. A lot. And not every lender offers these
every
products.
Bank's going to be different. Right.
Every bank's going to be different.
Because this is all, by the way, again, this is not, I wish you could call me, Mike Mills, mortgage guy, and talk to me about getting this. But this is most mortgage banks, your standard, that are doing FHA and VA and conventional loans. They don't do this type of stuff.
Correct.
Most of them.
Correct.
There are a few one-offs here and there. So mostly we're talking about private banks with private money, and they are making private decisions. In other words, they don't have, you can't go in and go, okay, well, here's the rules, and I've got this box checked, this box checked, and this box checked, because they're like,
give me my loan. They're like, no,
no,
we don't do that here.
Because they get to make that decision.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And ultimately, like we said, it's some banks have different requirements than other banks. Some banks will want you to be able to work with a builder which we haven't talked about this, but a builder who has experience building a home
Right.
and have built at least 10 homes
Right.
before they'll allow your plans to be built on this particular lot by this particular person.
So your brother-in-law, Bill, who wants to start his building company, probably isn't going to get.
He's probably not the guy who's going to get approved.
Right.
They want to see a track record. How do they know that builder has built 10 homes before?
Yeah.
Well, typically they're asking the builder to fill out an informational sheet
Right.
and show us proof of sales.
Right.
And saying, hey, where did you build? What did you build? What were the cost estimates? What did those plans look like? What was the finished product? Do you have a website?
Yeah.
Do you have a business? All that good stuff.
Are you legit?
So they're doing a background check, not only on you as the buyer, but also you as the builder.
Right.
And so, like I said, it's a lot of moving parts, but it can be done. Mm-hmm. It absolutely can be done. You just have to know the steps and try to, work accordingly. Right. If you're brand new and just trying to figure out how to do this from scratch, it's best to probably go talk to a bank first to figure out if they even do this type of lending and see what their requirements are and try to work backwards that way.
Yeah. I think you've told me before that, like, once the good thing about doing this, now let's talk about more on the investing side of it, is once you've done this a couple of times with the same bank, the process gets easier and easier and easier every time.
Absolutely. Right? So the first time they're looking into your life's financials and digging into your background, your business's background, and trying to make sure you're not as risky as as the next person.
Right.
Once you get past that point and you've established a relationship of paying on time and making sure that all your documents are put in on time and through compliance, then they almost start to open up the playbook for you on how to scale your business up faster. Mm-hmm. They will look at certain projects and say, hey, you could save some money if you did this here. Or if we did these 2 or these 3 cluster at a time, then we can probably lower the rate or lower the risk for you. Or if you give me a certain amount of contracts up front, I can cover more of the cost for you up front as a lender. So that way you're not spending as much of your own cash out of pocket to do this deal. And so, like anything, you establish the relationship, then the guidelines of our relationship start to change. If you're just trying to do one here, then they're going to probably lay the strictest guidelines on you possible, because they got to make sure that they don't lose money.
That the first one goes.
Exactly. And it goes smooth, and you are who you say you are. You do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
So from the investment standpoint, yes, it does get easier over time when you do more and more with that same relationship. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's where people, they don't necessarily understand that. I don't know why.
Well, there's a certain amount of fear, and I deal with this a lot too as a lender, where, people have a real fear of debt, which I understand. Sure. Like it's not anything that you shouldn't, you should just kind of treat blasé or whatever. But at the same time, when you're talking, you and I've talked about that, when you talk about asset-based debt, when you're talking about a debt that's associated to something that you could turn around and sell and get out of debt, it's a little different. And the rules,
call it good debt.
Yeah, the rules are a little different on it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I like useful debt. That's my.
There you go. Useful's a little bit better.
Yeah, it's useful. You can do things with it, but so I think that people are so terrified about taking on debt, and what can we gonna do? We have a $200,000 loan on this thing. How are we gonna get it done? I mean, you can sell it. Like if it doesn't, at the
end of the day,
if it's not working out, you can't afford to cover it, then just sell the piece of property.
And what's the bank's, their risk? You're saying I'm putting this land up as collateral. They know the land is valuable because they've ordered an appraisal on it.
Yeah.
And not only have they ordered an appraisal of the land, but when you have the plans that you're trying to build, they'll send that to the appraiser also and say, hey, give me an appraisal on this land based off of this plan being completed.
Right.
So if you screw up along the way, they're just going to take it.
Yeah.
And they know what it's worth because they've ordered the appraisal.
Right. Yeah. And it's not going anywhere. So, I mean, it's stuck in a spot, so they can always get access to it, and it's not going to disappear. All right. So at this point, if you're looking at, okay, I want to buy some property myself. Now I want to build something on it. We talked about what to look for on the property itself, looking for access to the roads, access to utilities, make sure it's not in a floodplain, all those kind of things to make sure that it fits. On the financing side, you can find land relatively cheap depending on where you're looking.
Absolutely.
Obviously if you want to build a house in the heart of downtown Fort Worth, you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
If you want to get outside the city limits, it's going to be much more available, and you're going to have a lot more freedom to do that.
Right.
And it actually doesn't take as much cash as most people think.
Yeah.
Because if you can pay cash for the land itself,
Yeah.
then you can leverage the land to get your construction loan and get other things moving in that direction.
Yeah.
You still have to have money.
Absolutely.
So there isn't, I mean, I don't know of one. Have you come across a circumstance where someone doesn't need any cash out of pocket to do something like this?
Not necessarily. Even the people, the gurus and stuff online will always tell you, hey, we can do this no money down deals and all that stuff. You typically have to partner with somebody who has the money.
Gotcha. Yeah. You just
So
get less.
Yeah. So that's the way that you can do it without having money yourself personally, but somebody
Right.
still has to have money to get that project moved along.
Yeah.
Ultimately, there are some creative financing ways, but I mean, there's way too complicated for the everyday person.
What would you say what would you say? And again, there's no way to quantify it 100% because you're just kind of just in your brain of what you dealt with. But if someone were to say, okay, I found a piece of land, I've got my plans, I talked to a builder, I got my piece of land, and the infrastructure is there, or it's got to be added, a few things to be done. I'm going to get my now done. What would you say? Because you're going through headaches, right? You're dealing with all the problems, but you're coordinating, you're kind of being your own GC, your own general contractor. What's the amount of money someone could save doing it that way versus going and buying a house and, that's already done?
Yeah. So ultimately, that's a great question. I can give you, let's just do a hypothetical situation, right? From where we are in our area and our location, right? If you're building a home that is, let's just say it's 3,000 square feet in a pretty decent area and it's new construction, right? These days, that home is probably going to cost you about $500,000. Right. If you did it yourself, if you just depending on what you got the lot at, if the lot was, below 100,000, you probably would end up saving probably like 100,000 or close to it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Because if you're doing your own GCing and paying the builder directly and all that, a lot of the fluff and the fee from the infrastructure and stuff, you're eating the cost on. So there's not an opportunity for markup or inflation on those costs.
Right.
You're just paying hard dollars. So you can save a lot of money doing it that way. Now, like I said, it varies from size, city, jurisdiction, lot size, plan size, all that good stuff. But just if we're saying 3,000 square feet in the heart of the metropolitan DFW area, you can probably save close to 100.
Oh, man, that's crazy.
But it's a lot of work involved. It's a lot of time involved. So
You're,
that's why everybody doesn't do it.
Right. Nothing's free. You're spending time, you're spending money, you're spending something. But well, and I really think that most people don't do it because they're terrified of, they don't know. Right. I mean, like the biggest thing about our industry as a whole, whether it be real estate or lending or whatever, is that most of what we do kind of is incumbent on, there's no information available to people to do it. I do loans every day and I know how to do it and I know what the rules are and I know what you can do and what you can't do. But the average consumer has no idea because he works at Lockheed Martin or he's a teacher or she's a teacher or whatever, and they don't pay attention to this stuff. So it's just the lack of knowledge that keeps people back because they're scared. Because if you don't know, like we talked about, you make mistakes, it's going to cost money.
It's fear and uncertainty.
Right. Now you got your education on this by doing it, obviously, but I'm sure that's not the only place. So what are some other resources that you've used along the way to kind of figure some of this stuff out?
Honestly, man, there are a lot of classes that you can take that, people are typically, when you have the real estate classes by the real estate gurus, they're trying to sell you something. Right. And so they'll offer you a free weekend.
Right.
And then after the free weekend, they'll say, if you buy this, then we'll give you our mastermind with these group of people and you'll make a whole bunch of money.
Right.
Well, there are some really good nuggets in those free weekend classes that you can learn and meet people. Right. I've learned a lot from, meetups and Facebook groups and things of that nature from other people who are doing the same thing or doing similar things in different areas. A lot of these groups and social media groups, which of course you got to vet them, but they have a lot of people who are thinking like you and or thinking about doing something that you're doing. So once you can tag along or meet and connect with those people, you get some valuable information that way as well.
Right.
YouTube, you learn a lot on YouTube.
Yeah.
There are a lot of great instructors and informational education on YouTube. Podcasts like this is where I learn a lot of information as well and are able to regurgitate that. But also going to your local like jurisdiction, city council meetings, planning and zoning meetings, which a lot of these meetings are open to the public because they want you to know what's going on with the city. you learn a lot of the policies and procedures right there. They put a lot of the agenda and stuff right there on paper for everybody who attends. It's just most people don't attend.
Yeah, because it's boring.
Because it's boring.
Yeah.
Right. But it's only boring if it's not interesting to your situation in most cases. So if it's interesting to you, then you're going to be more engaged and pay attention and learn a lot of those steps. Also, a lot of real estate professionals with a license don't know how to do this either.
Yeah.
And so I'm a realtor, so I can kind of say, hey, I've dealt with a lot of realtors, and my personal experience is these guys typically don't have a clue how to bring it from horizontal to vertical.
Yeah.
And so,
well, there's not a lot of people that do. I mean, honestly, it's a very unique thing to do. And there's I told you this before. It's like every guy that I've ever met that was a developer of some kind or whatever, making a lot of money.
And they never look the same.
No.
These guys, some of them will have button downs on, some of them have jeans on, some have overalls on. You cannot pick a developer out of a crowd for anything, right? But I think for the general public, the reason I say it that way or the way I said it was because the general public thinks a real estate professional can do everything.
Right.
They can do land, they can do commercial, and that's just not the case. We specialize in certain areas of real estate. And so take it easy on your realtor when he doesn't understand and you're asking him 12 questions about how to build a house from scratch and they've never done it before. They may have sold them, but they didn't see that process from ground up, from even before the land was purchased to getting it to be dirt moving.
Well, it's no different than anything else. I mean, if you're a doctor, right, and you're you don't do everything. You're not a brain surgeon and an orthopedist and a heart surgeon. Like you have things that you're good at, and you really do. I think you want to go to those people that are specialized in those things, and that's what they do, because you're going to get the most knowledge from them. And I think that's a key thing too that that a lot of people miss when it comes to anything like this is that whenever you're going through this process, it's always best practices to learn about it as much as you can. It doesn't mean that's because you're going to do it again or you're going to duplicate it or whatever. That's not the point. The point is that when you understand the information that's coming at you and someone is teaching you as they're selling, because look, if someone's going to buy your property for you and they're a wholesaler, and they're going to find something for you, well, ask them a question like, hey, how'd you find this one? What do you usually do? Like, just get a little bit of information.
Exactly. It's education. You'd be surprised what your brain can handle when you actually challenge it every single day.
Right.
And that's one thing that real estate does do to you. It challenges you every single day because things are different. The processes are different. So if you can get that education and ask those questions, even if it's not useful to you at that time, when it comes around at a later date, and you may not remember every portion of it, but that little antenna goes off, ding, ding, ding. Hey, I've heard this before.
Right.
Now you're more in tune as to this is important and I need to pay attention, as opposed to it's just another item on this piece of paper. I don't know.
Well, it's the opportunity, right? The whole all things in life, especially when it comes to investing, especially is about opportunity. And what's there's an adage about luck where they say, luck is the cross section or the confluence of preparation and opportunity, right? So if you don't know what you're looking for and you don't know what's available, then when an opportunity does present itself, you'll never be aware of it. I mean, you missed it, but you didn't even know you missed it because it was there and then it disappeared and you had no idea.
Absolutely.
Because you didn't have at least a little bit of a base on what to do with it and where to get your stuff from. So, well, I really appreciate you doing this with me today. You're helping me because I'm learning as we go through all this too, because this is something I'm very interested in. We're going to do another one coming up in a couple of weeks where we'll talk about the actual construction side of things and how to kind of move that piece forward, because that's another thing that you do. It's Conrad's jack of all trades. He's got everything under the sun. So
we try, man.
Yes.
We stay busy.
So
I have a short attention span.
That's right. I'll give everybody when we do this, I'll give them, well, I don't know. Do you want me to put your number on this?
I mean, people find it on billboards.
That's right.
So
it's all over
put it out there. My cell phone number, social medias, all that good stuff. I'm really only on Facebook and Instagram. I have a Twitter, but I mean, I just never use Twitter.
That's because we're not important enough to be on Twitter, buddy. That's we're not there yet. You have to be really. It's funny. Look at Twitter stuff, and I'll every once in a while I'll go through and somebody that I know, I can't think of somebody off the top of my head, like I don't know, actor or a
Yeah.
politician, and they'll tweet something, and
Yeah.
you're like, I wonder how many people. And it's like 37 likes, and you're like, oh, okay, well, they suffer from the rest of it just
Yeah.
like we do, because nobody gives a shit. They just scroll through. All right, man. Well, we'll come back. We'll do some more on this, and kind of go through the construction side of it a little bit. But I want to talk about the land because there's a lot involved with that. Hopefully, if you're out there and you're looking to try to pick up a piece of property, just take this little podcast and put it on like 1.5 speed.
Yeah.
And you can hear us talk really fast. But you'll take
get
it all
faster.
in. It won't take as much time. It's a little podcast trick. I don't know if you do that.
I do that.
Speed those suckers up because my brain's going, this is too much ums and whatevers. Let's go. So I appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming by. Anything else you want to tell everybody before we roll out?
Man, just like I said, due diligence. Do your education, do your research. If you don't know, don't just jump out there. Please ask somebody who's at least done it once or twice before, so that way you don't make a costly financial mistake trying to jump out there and do it on your own.
Cool. All right. Well, good luck to everybody. Find some land and let us know how it goes.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.